r/ask Reddit. What was the most fucked up thing your ex did after you broke up? When I was about 15 I went out with a girl, same age, from a different school. The relationship was fucked the whole time, very toxic person. Anyway I tried breaking it off multiple times, and I was always faced with the old well I'll just kill myself then. She used to be a cutter before we got together, so part of me thought she probably would try. Not being something I wanted on my conscience I stayed with her for a while. After getting really fed up with the relationship I broke it off for realtors, and she didn't take it too lightly, told pretty much her whole school that I got her pregnant. That made its way to my school, which made its way to my family. This was crazy. We hadn't had sex at all and everyone believed her over me. She even tried playing this out for as long as possible, even going as far as giving herself a baby bump. She was absolutely insane. Edit I didn't really expect to wake up to this sort of response, but hopefully this clears up some of the questions. I confronted her at her school when she had a bump. I don't know how the hell she'd done it, but her little group of friends carried that lie so hard, and I copped shit for a few months, as this particular GF was not overly attractive or even a nice person. I was told this by a few people throughout our relationship. I was never really the kind of guy to chase girls and try to get laid. I was always looking for a friend, long-term relationship style. My parents raised me very well to understand what people go through and to look for the person who might be underneath the surface. Very good advice. Although this person was Satan wrapped up in a slightly damaged girl's body. In the end my parents obviously took my side, but them confronting me about teenage pregnancy at the age of 15 was frightening. They thought I was just trying to cover it up as I didn't go to them with the problem first. I ended up calling the girl's mum and sat down and had a conversation with her. I'm not sure what she said to her crazy daughter, but it seemed to work. She and her mum must have tried a little damage control as suddenly everyone stopped believing the lie. Other than the meeting with her mum I had nothing to do with them as soon as the pregnancy rumor was spread, so I don't know really what happened. I just tried to forget the whole thing and it eventually went away. My closest ally in this whole thing was actually my school homeroom teacher. He was very empathetic and helped me deal with the issue of her threatening suicide as well as the whole pregnancy. He Daryl MVP. She took all my shower stuff while I was at work. Curtain, rod, all that stuff, and the toilet bowl scrubber. She took all that. I came home and said okay, not letting her take more of my stuff that's actually important. So I changed the locks. Went to work that night. She calls and says she needs in the apartment to get her things. I tell her nah, not without me there. I don't want you taking my stuff. She says she'll call the cops, and I tell her to go ahead. Cops show up at my work and ask what's going on. I show them my lease with her name not on it, and they say okay, we'll have her come back tomorrow. Call us when she shows up. She comes the next day and tells me she's taking my bed. $700. I tell her no, she didn't pay for it, and I have my credit statement printed ready to show the cop. She tries arguing she's taking the bed. Cop says look, you're not taking it. If you think you deserve it, take him to court. Tries arguing with the cop then. Cop says did you not hear me right? Take him to court. Didn't hear back from her about it. Edit for those wondering, I had a copy of the lease at work because a week or so before I made a copy of it to show my ex that she wasn't on it. I was under the assumption that because she wasn't on the lease, I'd be able to have her removed for trespassing if she tried anything crazy again. She had started getting violent towards the end. I wasn't aware of the whole establishing residency thing some people are mentioning. That's why I had the lease with me. I printed my statements because I knew the next day when she came back, if she tried to take any of my high dollar items I had bought, I could show the cop and not have to bother losing my things then having to go to court for them. Thanks for all the replies everyone. I've enjoyed everyone else's stories. I think we've all learned that lesson, to not put our dicks in crazy My time to shine. I dated a woman for 3 years. Let's call her Demanda. We lived together, grew apart, I thought the breakup went fairly smoothly. I agreed to pay for the apartment for the remainder of the lease, about a month and a half, and I went to stay with my bandmates. I came back a few days later to grab some of my things and the whole apartment was wrecked. She ripped all of the pages out of my textbooks, burned them in a trash can, and scattered the ashes all over the couch. All of my DVDs were shattered and placed neatly back inside their cases and on the shelf. She wrote vulgarities all over my paintings, slashed them, emptied my paint tubes on the floor, and cut the bristles off of my brushes. She cut the strings on my friend's guitar and scratched cheater, liar, pussy, dick on the body. I didn't cheat or lie. The others are up for debate. She took a hammer to my gaming PC, the fat grey Gamma Boy I've had since I was 8, my Northeasts and SNES, all of my toys, some flower pots that once housed some really nice shrubberies, and both of my cameras. My comic book collection was ripped to shreds. My clothes were cut into ribbons. My N64 and Wii and all of the games were missing, likely pawned. She smashed my glass desk. The cats went unfed, and she left a turd in the toilet. The cops came and told me that there was nothing they could do for me because we had lived together for so long. They were her things too, and she was certainly allowed to destroy her own property. The landlord was next. He changed the locks and struck her name off of the lease. All of her things were already moved out, so we both assumed she wasn't coming back. My brother came over the next day to help me move the rest of my things. Bed, furniture, washer/dryer, etc. We were nearly done when Demanda shows back up screaming obscenities. She put a few dents in my brother's truck while telling him how much of a cunt my mother is for not aborting us. Then, she tried to get inside to get some more of her things. Nothing she owned was in there anymore, and further lost it when her key didn't work. She punched me in the face and started hitting me with her incredibly dense purse. My brother called the cops and let her know that they were on the way. Cops arrived. She was gone. Their immediate reaction to the domestic dispute call was that I was a bad guy, so I ended up in cuffs while they looked for Demanda. After they realized that my eye was swollen shut and Demanda was nowhere to be seen, they started listening to my brother and I. He showed them the dents in his truck. I showed them my still wrecked apartment. One of them got a good laugh out of the situation. They took pictures and a statement and left. I sported a black eye at work and class for the next week or so. Fast forward a couple of weeks later. It's the last day of my lease. I'm sleeping on a mat on the floor. The only things left in my apartment are a few lamps, a TV, a microwave, a backpack full of some clothes I bought over the last few weeks, and my cats. It's 2 in the morning when I start getting drunk and texts from Demanda. I love you. Let's get back together. The usual. I ignore all of them and try to get some sleep. At 3, I get a knock on the door. Hey, open up. This is my apartment too. I tell her to fuck off. Then I hear a much deeper voice. Open the fucking door or I'll kick it in. Before I get a chance to respond, the dude is already trying to kick in my door. I grab my backpack and jet out the back. I called the cops as I left, but I didn't stick around to see what happened. When I return the next day, there's a few giant footprints in the front door. It's one of those big steel ones, and the door frame is broken. She has smashed all of my lamps and the TV, pissed on my pillow and mat, dumped all of my food out on the floor, spread kitty litter throughout the apartment, and smeared cat shit on the walls. She also let out or stole all of the cats. I got a call from her mother a few days later pleading with me to not press charges. I told her it was out of my hands. The cops had taken pictures and Amanda was going to be arrested and charged, whether or not I wanted it to happen. I did. Last I heard, she spent a month in jail, paid a $5,000 fine, and had to sit through anger management classes for 6 months. Good riddance. Tried to kill himself. We were together for 5 years, engaged for 3. Nothing like sitting at work on your second day when you get a phone call from the state hospital saying they have your fiancé. We had been split up for 2 months because he was crazy abusive and also just plain crazy. I asked to be excused from work, which they were surprisingly okay with, hopped across town to find him in the locked ward. I walked in and asked what he did, seeing as he seemed to be physically unharmed. Turns out he was caught by security trying to jump off a building. He said that if I didn't get back with him, that there was no point in living. I told him that there was no chance I was marrying him, but I'd always be there as a support. I called his mother, who lived interstate, and demanded she come and collect him. As crazy as he was, he didn't belong in a place like that, with people who were so far gone they were more disorder than person. They would only release him into the care of someone else, and I told him it wasn't going to be me, and that was the end of it. The last time I saw him was just a few hours before his flight. He asked for just a few hours of normal. So we cooked dinner, talked about mundane shit, went to volleyball together with our friends, and then at the end of our game she stood at the doorway to collect him. And he left. I guess you could say the worst thing he did wasn't trying to emotionally manipulate me. It was giving me a taste of what could have been, allowing me to feel something right before he left my life. Make no mistake, I'm far better off out of the relationship. I'm borderline unrecognizable as being the same person. But that departure ruined me for a long time. Never have one last fling. It's better to end with bitterness on your tongue than deal with months of what ifs and buts. I'm late, but story time. We had broken up a week before Christmas. New Year's comes around. I'm at a party drunk, and she's blowing up my phone. I have no idea at the time. A friend approaches me, tells me she's calling him too. I step outside, see I have about 30 missed calls, and 7 voicemails, 2 from her, 5 from her mother. I hear all of them to get the deets. Apparently a close friend of hers died. A friend I had never heard her mention. Her mother's voicemails were telling me that if I really cared about her I'd be there for her. I'm an asshole, all that jazz. So I think I'll bite. I'm not an asshole. I have a friend take me over there. Call a friend's mom on the way. Let her know that I'll be going to my ex's house. We get there. Her and her mother are outside. I'm squatted with 3 friends. She's sobbing. I ask if she'd like to walk around and talk about it. She talks about the deceased for a whole 2 minutes and then changes the subject to us 30 minutes of talking about us. We get back to her house with everyone around. I tell her that I came to support her. I don't want to get back with her. She goes off on a tantrum, screaming at the top of her lungs. A neighbor even came out to make sure no one was getting killed. She keeps screaming at me, asking how I can do this to her. Lies about being pregnant. I always wear a helmet. No chance. I call her out on that. She throws her phone across the road, or throw of a lifetime. Unfortunately there were no scouts for the NFL. She's on the floor hitting herself. Her mother is screaming at me. I decide I should leave before it gets worse. I'm honestly scared. I go home, talk to my parents. We change the codes to the house. My car gets egged every day for a whole month. A whole damn month. Save maybe 3 days. 5 years later, I see a familiar couple in front of me as I'm driving. Brake checks the shit out of me to the point that I have to veer off the road. Car speeds up to a red light. I'm pissed, so I pull up to the car once I get off the grass. Lo and behold, her mother. Where do I start? My ex 10 years ago was an abusive alcoholic. I had enough of her false promises and constant crap that I just walked out. In the next few months she would phone my house, drunk, gloating about who she's fucked. Show up to my parents, drunk, demanding to talk to me. Various times she was verbally abusive to my mother, who basically told her to fuck off before I called the cops. Threatened to lie to police that I sexually abused her son. Threatened to tell police that bruises on her body from being drunk all the time and falling over a lot was from me. Ironically, she was the one who beat me. Told my parents 5 months after I left her that she was 2 months pregnant and it had to be mine. Yeah, okay. Threatened to get her son's alcoholic junkie dad to do UN for not answering her calls. Called my boss various times at work, demanding I be fired for being abusive to her at my workplace, supermarket. He laughed at her and told her finally she was banned from the shop for harassing his staff. Probably more, but thinking about it makes me feel like crap. Edit. The thing that annoyed me more using her son against me, she was an incredibly shit parent and knew I cared a lot about him. He was actually taken into custody by her parents as she could not care for him at all. I recall once, I phoned her house. The son, who was probably 5 at the time, answered crying his eyes out that mummy was drunk again and he had had no food all day. I promptly went down there with my dad, grabbed the kid, fed him and took him to his grandparents' house. I feel sorry for the kid. Both parents were useless wastes of space and unfortunately both died a few years ago. His mum, my ex, had epilepsy. Never took her meds. OBV, always heavily drinking. Drowned in the bath. His dad died of drug overdose. Okay, he's probably better off without either. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. But losing both parents because of their own selfishness must completely suck. I've seen his gran a few times and always ask how he's getting on. Sorry, this is completely getting away from the main topic, but goes to show how utterly horrible some people are. We were living together, and we decided to buy another much needed car together. The car dealer gave me the car and asked me to get her signature to finalize the deal. He trusted us completely and stipulated just bring the paperwork back to him the next morning. Great. I bought a bottle of champagne that day and decided to get her signature ASAP. Couldn't find her till the next morning at her mother's house. Her mother was so happy to meet me at the door and tell me her daughter has been seeing somebody else for weeks at this house. I was floored. I had no idea, didn't even suspect anything like that could occur. I confronted her and she was like so cold and unresponsive to my questions about this new endeavor with another man. Actually, I was getting visibly upset and was irate because of her lack of caring and answering me that I was told to leave. I left the car papers and champagne at her mother's house. I turned the new car back to the dealer and told him I had inadvertently left the paperwork at her mother's house. He said don't worry about it because if the deal is off, the papers weren't needed. Well, I kept tabs on her and found out who she was with, a school friend. In time, my relationship and my love for her faded away. 2 years later, she comes back to me one night with the same car papers and the same bottle of champagne. She opened the champagne and started drinking it by herself. She was wanting to get back together. I was like, what? She had that same look on her face, cold and unresponsive, and she had this notion it was just a few days ago, not 2 years ago. We had a misunderstanding or a small fight. To her, time didn't move, and it was her only couples fight to her, not a girlfriend having sex with another guy fight. She was actually telling me she was moving back and with me starting tomorrow without asking my permission. The girl was a loon. When I told her this wasn't a few days ago, this was 2 years ago, she stared into space. That cuckoo look. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't take her back. This is what we wanted, isn't it? To be together? I told her that was my sentiment 2 years ago, and I don't have those feelings for her anymore. She looked at me like I was crazy and told me it was only days ago she was with this other guy. She wouldn't leave, so I called her mother up to come pick her insane daughter, and that was that. She was a lunatic. I had a bad breakup with a girl who was trying on different religious affiliations like a shopper tries on pants. Throughout most of the lengthy breakup process, she would show up at my door demanding to talk, with her beefy new boyfriend behind her looking like he was ready for action, or calling me to tell me how her new very religious boyfriend was giving her a proper rodding. Found out she'd been doing the house visits, even when I wasn't home, quietly taking things each trip, which got me even more wary. So I hatched a plan. Early in our relationship, we had done some quasi-religious ceremony she said would celebrate our union, not marriage, just union, she said, involving a big pillar candle we bought from a thrift store. I found the candle and carved all sorts of mysterious symbols into it and burned it for a couple of hours. I left it on the back porch on a plate next to a small fake brass dagger that was much more a decorative item than a weapon. It would done a shitty job cutting butter or poking holes in paper. She called me the next day, growing more and more hysterical as I openly pretended to play dumb. while she uttered dire warnings about dealing powers I don't understand. What did you do? You don't know what you're doing. Spells are beyond you. You'll get us both killed or worse, etc, etc. I revealed nothing and everything, telling her I didn't know what she was talking about in a tone of voice that clearly said that I did. After she hung up, things were quiet for about a month. She then showed up one night, alone, apologized and politely asked that we talk about things, which we did, and there were revelations for her in the understanding department which eventually led to her finally leaving me alone and going her own way. On my birthday, a few months after our breakup, she called me and wanted to see me. I was having a very difficult time with the breakup and was genuinely extremely happy to hear from her, so I said sure, come on over. So she came over, we drank, talked, and eventually had sex. Afterwards, she wanted me to walk her home as I usually did. As we were walking up the alley behind her street, this was our usual route that we took to get to her place from mine. She said, hey, I have a birthday present for you. Close your eyes and put out your hand. So I did, and suddenly I was on the ground. When I opened my eyes, I saw her looking at me with complete hatred, and she started swinging at me like her life depended on it. She must have hit me in the face at least 4 to 5 times before I realized what was happening. I was in complete shock. Then I looked down the alley and saw a bunch of people coming out of shadows and running towards me. Long story short, her coming over and having drinks, smiling and laughing with me, and even having sex with me was just an act to get me to that spot where she had prepared an ambush with about 8 people to kick my ass. She had told them all that I would beat her regularly, slept with her friends, and raped her on more than one occasion, and all of it was completely untrue. I managed to get away before the other guys caught up with me. Luckily, I still have absolutely no idea why that happened. We broke up because she had been cheating on me with several different guys, some of whom had come to me to tell me what was going on. Edit. But wait, there's more. A few weeks after that incident, I went to a concert with a few friends. She was there. Somehow I managed to get past what had happened and be civil with her. Right near the end of the show, a guy came up and was like, hey, you're Necrosis 13. We'll see you outside after the show's over. I called up a friend to come pick me up, and as he pulled up with his van, I ran outside to try to jump in. Got intercepted halfway, thrown to the ground, and stomped by at least 2 people. All I saw was the bottom of people's shoes as they were hitting my face. Oh, yeah. And a couple of weeks later, she blew my half-brother in front of a bunch of mutual friends in a park. And finally, tried to kill herself, and told investigators that it was because I raped her. I was questioned by social workers once, and I guess they believed me, because I never heard from them again. She later spent 3 months on suicide watch in the hospital. AWW6400 comments, I'm going to get buried. Oh well, I'll post anyway, maybe someone will see it and enjoy the story. So to set the backdrop, first year in college, I had broken up with my first serious girlfriend and high school sweetheart very recently, and was dealing with putting my life back together really. This story is not about her, though believe me that breakup deserves one. It is about the girl I met shortly after. She was a friend of a friend. Well, she was a recent friend of a recent friend. I'll skip the part where everything starts up, because it's not about that. We spend the next 2 months hooking up and spending a lot of relationship time together. Since we both recently ended serious long-term relationships, neither of us bothered to define it in any way, but I can say we definitely treat it as something more than friends with benefits. At the end of this period I get a text from her essentially, I'm not ready for a relationship blah blah. I responded, that sucks because I was developing feelings for you, but if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. This was the extent of the exchange. I assure I'm not yada-yadaing anything here. School starts up again a week later, and it gets back to me from my friends that she's dating someone now. I'm not stupid, I realize this is why we ended things. But hey, like I told her, if that's how she feels, that's fine. I start texting a neutral female friend about the situation. My friend asks if I want her to talk to her for me. I tell her word for word, no, don't bother her about me. If she doesn't want to be together, that's fine. This is where things get crazy. You're going to read this next part and go, he had to have left something out. There's no way she just does this. I promise you I told you 100% of the build up on my end. Now, as I mentioned at the start, just over 2 months ago I had broken up with my first serious girlfriend, and I was still kind of dealing with that, both physically with her, because she didn't seem to want to remove herself from my life for more than 2 months at a time, and just mentally in general. I wasn't going to class as much as I should for that first week, just feeling down, and it was hard to get myself out of bed some days. Somehow this gets back to the recent girl that I'm talking about. Now, I don't remember the exact conversation that happened. This was almost 8 years ago, and the preceding events are what stuck with me more than the word said. All I know is she came to confront me about now showing up to classes. When I shrug off the questioning as to why, she starts to get mad. When I go back to what I was doing before she showed up, playing Xbox, and my friend was on the headset for this whole thing, which he still laughs about the event to this day, well, she gets furious. First, she throws herself on the floor of my dorm room and literally starts flailing and kicking and yelling like a toddler. Not knowing how to approach that situation, I just continue ignoring it and playing on my 360. Obviously, wrong choice. She gets up, pulls my 360 off my dresser where it was, and starts swinging it at me. I managed to get her to stop that thanks to my roommate showing up at this point. He kind of stumbles in and more or less asks what the hell is going on. This turns her attention to him. She flips out at him and starts yelling at him. She then proceeds to chase him out of our dorm, down the hallway, and into the men's bathroom, where he uses the door to keep her out. I guess that ultimately calmed her down, because she comes stomping back, curses me out, and leaves. My roommate eventually returns, we laugh it off and move on. Until about a week later, campus security shows up at my door. They ask me to come with them, and they lead me to the dean's office. There he informs me that they're aware that I'm severely depressed and at a high risk for suicide. He admits he considered straight having me hospitalized, but instead decided just to have me watched and mandate counseling for me twice a week. It didn't matter what I had to say at this point. The dean's mind was made up. So I took it and started going to counseling twice a week with one of the college psychiatrists. I explained to the psychiatrist the whole situation, that I'm of no danger to myself, and I don't know why I'm really there. Ultimately though, I do make the best of it and have some great conversations with the psych about my high school ex and other issues completely unrelated to the crazy college girl. Now though, I literally could not walk out of my dorm building without campus security walking up to me and asking me if I was alright. One time I still remember, I stepped outside just to make a phone call with my mom outside of everyone's earshot, and while I'm on the phone with my mom they come up and start questioning me. That became my life at the college. Now my roommate, he was never the sharpest tool in the shed. We were roommates, but we weren't friends too, so he didn't truly know what to make of the whole situation. Finally one morning I wake up, and my roommate is sitting there like he always is, notices and turns to me and asks, "Hey, did you try and contact girl earlier today?" And I told him the truth, that I haven't attempted to contact her for almost 3 weeks now. He informs me that he asked because she just called him to yell at him and tell him to stop me from constantly trying to contact her. This is where the whole background workings are now revealed to me. He admits that he's been involved with talks between her and the dean almost since the beginning. He didn't really know what to believe, but basically, she convinced the dean that I was depressed and suicidal, and now she was convincing the dean that I was constantly trying to contact her, and they were now discussing filing a restraining order against me. This pissed me off. I had been treated like shit by the college for the past 3 weeks because of some crazy girl. I immediately go down to the dean's office, insist on a meeting, and I'm eventually given one. I tell him she's been harassing me, that she is now harassing my friends, that I have not tried to contact her, and I have the phone records to prove it. The dean brushes me off tells me that they have my phone number on file, so there's no need for proof, and sends me on my way. I head back to my dorm and inform my roommate that he needs to talk to the dean on my behalf because the dean basically blew me off. I remind my roommate of the time she literally chased him into the bathroom and he had to lock himself in. I tell him that the only person that even offered to talk to her for me, I told in no uncertain terms not to. I eventually had him call her and she confirmed my story. Finally this convinced him to go talk to the dean on my behalf. This where the story winds down. After that I don't hear from her or the dean again. Campus security stops bothering me. I continue going to the therapy, partially because I was never told I didn't have to, partially because I actually enjoyed having someone to just rant life's problems to twice a week. Finally the second the semester ended I left that college never to return. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.